why is Lower Decks doing what Picard don't? Okay? That should be the new slogan for Lower Decks. We do what Picard don't. That's the title of this episode. Well. Look who's back. Yeah. Back on that grind. Yeah. At it every day. Maybe every week. It's Lieutenant Mark. And I just watched Lower Decks Season 2, Episode 1. Strange Energies. Remember how they used to say, I'm detecting a strange energy field. Some kind of matter, some energy, some power. This title was a play on that, I think. Captain, I'm detecting a strange energy field. Captain, I'm detecting a wave of energy. Just energy in general. The energy in this episode was strange. Just to make it brief, as a quick summary to start off with, this episode felt like a strange TOS Season 3 fever dream. Like I just binge watched the nastier kind of episodes of TOS, and then I got very sick and slept for 14 hours and had a nightmare, and this episode was that nightmare. It is not bad, though. This episode was pretty good. I like this episode more than the first episode of Season 1. In many ways, this episode reflected the first episode of Season 1, but it also contrasted it in many ways. So to get into it, we see in the beginning, this is the section before the opening credits, Mariner is being harassed by Cardassians. Oh no. And she's escaping from their prison colony, which appears to be dug into an asteroid, which is a classic Star Trek staple, having a station bored into an asteroid. We've seen it, of course, in the concept art for Planet of the Titans Star Trek. Look it up if you don't know what I'm talking about. And we've seen it return, I believe, in the first reveal shot of the early design of the Discovery. So it harkens back to those days. So I like that. I like when we borrow from Star Trek in a visual and non-vocal way. It's not necessarily a reference, but it rhymes. So Mariner escapes from this Cardassian prison. She sees Boimler there, and curiously, Boimler is in his U.S.S. Titan outfit, which originally threw me for a loop, because I saw this originally. I was like, oh, it's a hologram. It's a holodeck training program of some sort. And then I saw that Boimler was in his other uniform, and I was like, wait a minute, is this really happening? Because he's in the different uniform. But then it turns out Mariner took the time to give Boimler his U.S.S. Titan outfit in this holodeck program, which shows more about her thought process than you might think, because it means that she spent time working on this program, and she was thinking about Boimler when she did it. So, there's food for thought. This holodeck program ends, but not before Mariner can get in a quick dig at an Andorian crewmate. An Andorian crewmate comes to the holodeck and tells Mariner that she needs to go somewhere, and Mariner just says, I hate that Andorian. I mean, 5 minutes in and we're already back to the bizarre nastiness of referring people to just their species like that. It's very bizarre, but we've seen it in Discovery, unfortunately, and we've seen it in Lower Decks before, so it's par for the course, unfortunately. This holodeck program ends, and the mission here is assisting with giving an alien race their own subspace call sign / number, and cleaning up after their industrial revolution. They make it sound like an industrial revolution just happens like that, because Mariner insists that they do some cleaning up in public spaces because they forgot to after their industrial revolution. Just forgot. It makes it sound like this happens in a second. Anyway, Mariner and her mother are working together. Mariner's mother being the captain, which is common knowledge now amongst the crew. By the way, it's no longer a secret. And they clearly hate working together, so I don't know why they're doing it. And I also do not know why we have a partnership between an ensign and the captain. What is the logic behind that? Their mother and daughter, they don't need to be partners. I don't think the captain needs to deputize an ensign to be their executive on anything. I don't recall that needing to be a thing. However, I guess they're a team now, and right off the bat, we're complaining about Mariner going on her own side missions, as it were, defying or subverting the orders of the captain, clearly having learned nothing from season 1. Ransom is doing his job on the surface of this planet, which is good, assisting the delegates from this world in finding subspace frequency numbers for them, although they're very picky and choosy about what number they get. Seem to have a fixation on the digits. I don't know. But Mariner is using what appears to be like a sonic, kind of like a sonic leaf blower almost, to clean up the side of this building. But unfortunately, she activates some type of ancient structure that seems to move and imbues Ransom with godlike powers, similar to Gary Mitchell from TOS, which is name dropped in this episode. And Ransom basically turns into this this maniac who was converting civilians into ransomites, making them look like himself, and his head detaches, and his head becomes a bludgeon to attack the Cerritos with. So the Cerritos and Ransom's head are up in orbit, and they're duking it out. And there's many callbacks to TOS. The Doctor, I believe, confirms that Kirk defeated Gary Mitchell with a boulder. And so that's their first idea, is to use a boulder to stop this guy because he is like Gary Mitchell. However, Ransom's powers seem off the scale if you compare it with Gary Mitchell. Gary Mitchell, if I remember correctly, just became psychic, and on top of that, I believe he also had telekinesis. Don't quote me. But Ransom is shooting beams of energy. He's transforming solid objects. He's transmuting matter into different shapes. A lot of very cool visuals there. I'll get into the visuals later. Plot A, the A plot, between Ransom and the ship, is solved by Mariner staying on the surface of the planet and kicking Ransom's body's balls. Mariner kicks Ransom in the balls multiple times, which disables the head. And the head returns to the body. The Cerritos is saved. And all's well that ends well. B plot is a replay, more or less, of the B plot from the first episode of the first season. Rutherford is on a date with the same character who he was on a date with in the first episode. Tendy's upset about that because Tendy is secretly in love with Rutherford, and she abuses her powers as a doctor, or, medical officer, to trick Rutherford into thinking he has some type of disease that's caused by a cybernetic implant. It's all a lie, and it's nasty and scary. But they chase each other around the ship while the ship is being harassed by harassed by Ransom's gigantic head. It makes for some funny slapstick, but I can't help but getting this feeling in my mind that Tendi and Rutherford are just characters who are suffering from tunnel vision. They can't seem to interpret anything that's going on around them. They're totally 100% focused on what they believe to be the task at hand, which is Rutherford going on a date with what appears to be a Trill woman, and Tendi. So B-plot is solved at the end, and they hug and embrace, and they say, "Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I didn't mean to almost kill you with these strange injections to trick you into thinking that you had some type of disease that was afflicting your implant, and that's why you couldn't go on a date." And this occurs after Tendi tells Rutherford that, "Oh, I just wanted to be your friend." But really, she wanted to be his girlfriend, so we're no further ahead. All this was for nothing. I guess they can be friends. Remember, though, Rutherford's memory has been wiped from Season 1. Keep that in mind. Which I guess gives the writers free lease to rehash story arcs from Season 1 that had to do with Rutherford and Tendi. I'd like to see some development on the Rutherford and Tendi stories. It seems like we're getting a lot of Boimler and Mariner. I'd like to see in this season Rutherford and Tendi step up to the plate, as it were, and become more important characters that develop and have a more clear and consistent story arc between them. A-plot and B-plot, unfortunately, do not intertwine in any significant way. Anything that happens in B-plot does not really seem to affect A-plot, or vice versa, which is unfortunate. I like it when these plots intertwine a lot. I'm not opposed to the idea of having A, B, and say C plot, but I do like it when they intertwine and affect each other in an interesting way. This episode didn't really have that. And right before the episode ends and everything seems to be wrapping up, we get a cut to Boimler on the Titan at what appears to be the pilot's seat, but I'm not sure. Freaking out as they're being attacked by what seems to be actual Cardassians, and they're in an actual battle, an actual episode of Star Trek, as it were, and they get sucked into some type of anomaly. I don't know where they're going to end up, if they're going to go back in time or forward in time, or into another dimension, or to another spot in space entirely. That remains to be seen, if that's ever followed up and it's not just totally a gag. I do want to see Boimler back on the Cerritos, because I ended up liking Boimler. And I was sad that he went to the Titan. And I think the writers of the show knew that too. And I think he's going to be back in the Cerritos. Unfortunately for him, maybe. Because he wanted to be on the Titan? I mean, who wouldn't? That's a cool ship. The Cerritos, not so much. Now, visually, this episode was a treat. This episode had canon, I believe to be Galler-class Cardassian ships, I believe. It had a Miranda class. It had the Cerritos, obviously. And it had tons of shuttles in the background. And I think I saw a Jem'Hadar ship. Fantastic. Why is Lower Decks doing what Picard don't? Okay? That should be the new slogan for Lower Decks. We do what Picard don't. That's the title of this episode. Lower Decks does what Picard don't. Because we got all kinds of canon-looking ships here. And just a beautiful display of canon designs for that era, with the L-cars and the pads and shuttles and what have you. Why can't we see this in live action Star Trek? Why can't we get this in Picard? Why can't we get this in Discovery? Why can't we get this? We're probably not going to get it in Strange New Worlds, but here's hoping. So yeah, this episode is almost worth checking out just for the visuals, to be honest. I did like this one more than the first episode of the first season, and I think there was 2 F-bombs in this episode that I wish they didn't have. This episode was no funnier for having the F-bombs, to be honest with you. If we're honest with ourselves and we're mature about it, do we think that F-bombs make it funnier? Really? It's not. Okay? This episode is not even 1% funnier for having the F word in it twice. It's not. Okay, guys? You just gotta stop. It's not funny. Okay? And a lot of the reckless inter-colleague violence is not funny either. It's not particularly funny seeing Mariner ram Ransom in the balls over and over and over again. Draw your comedy from elsewhere. There's ways to do it without interpersonal conflict. And I believe they name-dropped that concept in this episode. I believe Mariner said that she's not supposed to have any interpersonal conflict, which is a subtle dig at the tried and true writing style of Star Trek, in that characters were not supposed to really come to blows with each other. Okay? Characters that were in Starfleet together, that is. It's just sad that we cannot draw humor from a franchise that takes place in a universe with an infinite amount of civilizations to see. Don't you think that it would be funnier and more in keeping with Star Trek itself if the humor came from the aliens? Like, imagine the Starfleet officers depicted in the show were in fish out of water situations on second contact missions on various planets, and they had to deal with aliens as it were, with wildly different customs and the like that the Federation is not yet accustomed to. Wouldn't that be cool? We get a taste of it in Lower Decks, but I really think that should be the core of the comedy, and it's not, unfortunately. That being said, I tend to look at these things as not as a whole. I look at them in context, and I try to find the good in it. And watching this episode, I thought it was pretty fun. There was a lot of Mariner that I was disappointed by. I wanted to see some more development on the Rutherford and Tendi front. Didn't really get it. I'm going to give this one a 6.5. I think this first episode is already hitting the high water mark that we hit in the entire third season of Discovery, almost. Like, the Lower Decks writers seem to be able to regularly stomp on the writers of Discovery and Picard, honestly, if you want my opinion. And this show, it's not even really good, So when I say 6.5, understand that that's in context. Nothing in Lower Decks so far has risen to the level of an episode that I would want to rewatch regularly. Season 1, having the benefit of hindsight, is interesting because you can go back and look at the reviews you gave for something in a light that has come about after letting it simmer, letting it marinate in your mind. So with regards to season 1 as a whole, I found myself rewatching the episode with Boimler and his girlfriend, seemingly his girlfriend, and he goes to the mess hall, or whatever it's referred to, and orders hot beer. He says, 1 beer, hot. And then he tries to get it to not do that because he doesn't want hot beer. He just said the word hot because he thought it sounded cool. And that's the scene I go back and watch. I don't know why, but I watch the scene with Boimler acting cool and pretending to be a cool dude to impress his girlfriend and ordering hot beer. So you can go back and watch that if you want to. I don't know why I do, but for whatever reason it just works in my mind, and that's the scene I go back and watch. Call me crazy. I haven't watched a single frame of Picard since it was over. I just don't want to go watch it ever again. I've watched a few of the scenes of Starfleet HQ in Season 3 of Discovery. And I've watched 1 or 2 battles from Season 1 of Discovery. That's all I've cared to look back on. So what is the rewatchability of these past few Star Trek efforts from Kurtzman and Co.? I'm thinking low, but this episode, 6.5 out of 10. How can we really complain? You know, we're seeing some ships. We're getting some funny action. Turn your brain off. The old Star Trek is still there, but here's hoping for the future. Stay tuned for next week when we're going to review episode 2 of Lower Deck Season 2. Maybe it's going to be better. Maybe it's going to be worse. Maybe we're going to have some closure on what happened with Boimler at the end of this episode. Who knows? But if you're interested, make sure you hit that like button and ring the bell and what have you, and subscribe, because we're going to be back next week. And I'm Lieutenant Mark, and I'm signing off. See you later.